Side Out with Dave and Mecky. So I hope you have your tinfoil hat all made and cinched down tight over your ears. So take it away, Dave and...
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave. And sorry, sadly, no Mecky today. We're broadcasting live from the Sydney studios in Australia. It's great to jump onto the chat room at freedomslips.com and discuss our topics that get you thinking. You can listen from there too. Also follow us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Check out shinysideout.net for our show archives, notes and links we paste in the chat during the show. It's so easy to listen to Revolution Radio though. I have to say, if you live in Kentucky, you can tune in on FM, find WZZR 101.3, or you can get an app. If you have a smart device of any kind, you can get Revolution Radio's own app, TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com, Radio Tuner, or our app, Shiny Side Out. It's available on all platforms. At home, on a Grace Tabletop digital radio, which is pretty cool, you can listen to radio from around the world, or driving around in a general motor vehicle with a receiver-enabled radio. All of those things I just mentioned are revolutions in radio. You can buy a CD of your favourite host's 2014 season from the station. Each CD costs $30. Check out the info on the station's website. But you can also get one of just the best shows from 2014. And it has a bunch of hosts on there. They're really cool. I recommend you do that. Great interviews. The number to call in if you're in the USA is 347-688-2902. That's 02 at the end. But I'm not inviting anyone to call in just yet. Or via Skype, you can add Freedom Screen and you can connect to the station that way. It'll forward on to me and you're good to go. But remember, don't do any of those things. Don't call up and don't try to connect via Skype unless you've already to talk to us in the chat room, which is available at www.freedomslips.com. Now, I have to say, Solaris' show is awesome again. I swear she outclasses us. She's awesome. Love her show, love her guests. Can't believe she gets such good guests. If you didn't catch her show and you're watching this for the first time, maybe you've just fallen into Shiny Side Out, you want to find Solaris Blue Raven shows on the station's archives. You won't go wrong. Tonight she had Henry Kroll on, and that was a great show. I was listening to that, prepping for my show today. So jump into the Freedom Slips archives and to look them up. Today is show 160, or 060 and 100 as Mecky would say. Unfortunately, Mecky's not with us today. He's in Hong Kong doing 14-hour days, working for the man. And working hard. It's a tough job he does. It sounds tougher than mine. I thought mine was tough. But no, he's doing it hard. He apologises in advance of today's show. He listened to last week's show, which he was also unavailable for. And but I dare you to hang on. Hang on, because today I've got an awesome guest. My guest I've been trying to get on, and it's only been just an inconvenience between the both of us where we've not been able to schedule this. And for 4 years at least, I've been wanting to interview him ever since I had a radio show. Before then, it wouldn't have been an interview, it would have just been a discussion. But I feel as though this is the right time. And we're very lucky to have him with us today because of the time frame. It's very late in the US, and I appreciate his time with us. Today's guest, it's a guessing game, but you don't need to guess because I'll tell you anyway. Today's guest, Sergeant First Class in the US Army. He's retired now. Secret clearances, involved in secret operations, and one of those types of operations was crash retrieval. And in some cases there were bodies. I have to say that. It's very important. It'll become more important in a minute. At one time in his long 22 and a half year career in the military, he was stationed at Fort Lee, Virginia. He's widely known for his quote in the press conference where he stated 57 catalogue species. I think that's the thing. That very phrase, and I want to ask him about it, that phrase said everything to me that I needed to ever know about anything. All right. He's also the author of 3 books. And his latest book, Eyes Only, The Story of Clifford Stone and UFO Retrievals, is available on Amazon.com, and I urge you to read that. Also his other 2 books as well. Clifford Stone, welcome to the show. Welcome to Shiny Side Out.
Thank you kindly, sir.
Thank you too. For this interview, do you mind if I call you Cliff, please?
Not a problem at all.
Thank you so much. Now, I respect your time, and I in fact I respect everything about you. Thank you so much for being with us. The question that we ask all of our guests, every guest that's ever been on, the first thing we say is, what were you doing before your career went sideways? But with you, I mean, you're in the military and you were subjected to this, so it really wasn't. Was it really your choice? I mean, let's take it back so that our listeners know who you are. Did you have like a normal upbringing? Did you go to school and would everything seem normal as when you grew up?
I went to school, but the situation is that early in life, from the time I was about 6, 7 years old, I had playmates. A lot of people trying to say, oh, well, they're just imaginary. But I knew the difference between imaginary and what was really going on. And I really didn't, I saw them as, human beings, as children, boys and girls that I was acquainted with, that I was playing with, It wasn't until an incident when I was about 7 years old, there in Portsmouth, Ohio, when I found a little bird and it had fallen out of its nest, and it broke its beak. So I wanted to try to save it, and as children do, if you have a cut, you go hold the cut underwater, and that stops the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I took the bird, and I held it under the faucet, and of course that killed it. And I was broken-hearted about that. I mean, I've never been crazy about killing anything. But when this happened, I got to see one of the boys up here, which was an entity that would follow me throughout life. That was, I always called Corona, and that's what he told me to. The strange thing, he says, my name is Corona with a K, and I don't know why it was important for me to know. Even to this day, I don't know why that was spelled with a K. But I went ahead and I saw this creature. It wasn't the little boy no more. It was about 4.5, 5 foot tall, greenish collared creature. And I went ahead and I ran and I tried to hide. I mean, I knew then this isn't normal. This is something that shouldn't be. So I ran trying to find a place to hide, and over a period of time, I was able to go ahead and accept this entity being there. And when I'd see him as he would appear as a child, I knew that wasn't a child. I knew exactly who he was. In this case, I would say, okay, he's, got like a mask on or something, because it's not human, and I knew this. But I had to come to grips with, do I go ahead and accept what was going on and try to learn from it, or just resist it and always live in fear? And realizing that this was going to be a lifetime experience, it was going to be going on throughout my entire life, I chose to go ahead and accept it and try to learn from it.
Good man.
That created problems because the whole situation is I didn't hide the fact that I believed in UFOs and I believed in alien visitation.
Mhm.
And as a child, that created major problems for me. But to deny what I knew to be fact was to be denying myself, so I couldn't do that. So I went ahead and I had these experiences. Then it was in the summer of '57. I was out playing, going to get my friend to go play a game of baseball. And while I was in back of his house, knocking on his door and calling for him, it's about 10 in the morning. It was a bright, sunny day. All of a sudden, I heard this whirling sound, like the spinning of a electric generator or motor, electric motor.
Yeah, yeah.
And I looked around to try to find out what the noise was and where it was coming from. Then I noticed it was coming from overhead. Well, my Q Banks was my friend that I went to get, and I was in his backyard, but beyond his backyard was an alley, and on the other side of the alley there was these warehouses about 4 stories high. So I looked up and I looked over the warehouse directly in back of him, and as I was looking, there came this white opaque disc going from over the warehouse directly over my head, directly over his house. And it was roughly about 3 foot, appeared to me about 3 foot in diameter. It had an inner rotating ring and an outer rotating ring. The outer rotating ring was rotating clockwise. The inner rotating ring was rotating counterclockwise.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, to me, that was likened into an epiphany. I mean, I felt that this was something I had to share with the world. I ran to tell my mom what I'd just seen. She wasn't real happy with me saying I'd just seen a flying saucer. My dad wasn't real happy. And of course, you know, every chance I got, it was something I wasn't supposed to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
About 2 weeks after this event, it was True Magazine. They came out with a UFO magazine that was dedicated to UFOs. It had all kinds of UFO articles in it. But it was identified as a men's magazine. Therefore, a child of 8 isn't supposed to buy that magazine. But I went there, I found it, and I wanted to buy it. And I went to, it was Kelso's drugstore. And it was on the corner of the block that I lived on there in Portsmouth, Ohio. While I was trying to convince the druggist there at the drugstore to please let me buy the magazine because it was about UFOs, there was a person in uniform, Air Force person, captain, and I only knew him throughout the entire time that I did know him as Captain Brown. He came up and asked me, "Oh, you have an interest in UFOs?" I said, "Yes." And he said, so do I. So eventually he went ahead and bought 2 of the magazines, asked if I liked root beer floats. And I'd never had a root beer float, and I didn't think I would like it because, you know, you drink the root beer, you eat the ice cream. You don't mix them together.
Mm-hmm.
But he told me, if you don't like it, you know, you don't have to eat it. It's not a problem. But anyhow, we got the 2 root beer floats, and he got the 2 magazines. We went over into a booth, sat down, and he says, "I have an interest in UFOs too." He says, "Tell me, why are you interested?" So I went ahead and told him the things that had been happening in my life, and I felt good about it because here, for the first time, was a person actually from the Air Force, an officer no less, that was listening to me, and in my opinion, at my young age, was taking me very, very serious about what I had to say. And eventually he said, "Okay, you know, I need to go home with you, and if it's okay with your parents, I'll let you have one of these magazines." And I went ahead, took him home with me. Then he talked to my mom and dad. And I don't know actually what they talked about and what was finally decided, but anyhow, he decided he'd come by and see me ever so often, and he gave me the magazine. So that started with me having contact with him frequently, 2 or 3 times a month, sometimes more often, all the way up until 1968, when I heard that he had gotten killed in a crash of a T-33 out of Lockton Air Force Base. I went ahead, attempted to go into the Army in '67 in what we called the delayed entry program, and I was still in high school, but I could go ahead and enlist, and I had 180 days, which I'd have completed high school. I'd be graduating in that time frame, then go on to basic and go on into the military. So I went to Fort Hays, there in Columbus, Ohio, for my examination for entrance into the military. I was found to be medically rejected, so I got 4F, which is permanently medically rejected from military service. I went back after I graduated from high school there in Asheville, Ohio. I went back to Portsmouth, Ohio, and there I got a notice from my draft board that I was to report to Ashland, Kentucky for reevaluation. So I went to the Armed Forces Entrance Examination Station there at Ashland, Kentucky, and was reevaluated, told the same thing, that nothing's changed. I was still 4F. Anyhow, there was a person there who was a colonel, a doctor, and he was visiting from Washington, D.C. at that Armed Forces entrance station that I was at. And he went ahead and told the captain, who did all the physical on me and everything, told him, look, why don't you take the rest of the afternoon off, go take your family, go to a park there, an amusement park there in Huntington, West Virginia, not too far away, called Camden Park. He told him, why don't you take him to Camden Park and enjoy the rest of the afternoon, just take it off, and I'll finish up the people we still have here. So all of a sudden, I was the last person to be seen, knowing that after I was seen, I'd be going back home into discussion. But when I went in to see this colonel, he went ahead and said, do you really want to go in the military? And I said, well, yes. I said, I really do. I want to serve my country. He says, so if you got in, you don't think you'd want to get out? I said, no, if I got in, I wouldn't want to get out. I want to serve my country. So he said, okay, I'm going to make it possible for you to go in. He says, but remember, anytime you want out, you have the $64 ticket to get out, because all you have to do is bring up the fact that you have this medical condition. But remember, that's only for the first 180 days.
Wow.
After 181, you're locked in. And I told him at that time, you get me in, you don't have to worry about me getting out. I want to serve my country. So I went ahead and got in. Went through basic, went through AIT. And when I went through AIT, I was going to be trained as a clerk typist. I never saw a typewriter except for the first day, maybe part of the second day. I went ahead and was put on doing duty where I had to hand out medical records at the hospital there that was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Then one night I had to go over, and we were cleaning up the headquarters building, which housed the intelligence offices in that headquarters building. And while I was doing that, there was a person there that was once again visiting from Washington, D.C. He went ahead and struck up a conversation with me and asked, well, do you have an interest in UFOs? I was clear blue. And I said, oh, not really. And he says, oh, I think you do. He says, I have an interest. And he says, they're real, you know. And I said, well, I wouldn't know anything about that. He says, here, let me show you something. Well, I knew what the word top secret meant
Mm-hmm.
when it was posted on the document. I mean, even though it's just an AIT and still new to military service and how things are done, I knew top secret was something I wasn't supposed to be, that I wasn't supposed to see. But top secret, backstroke, and a couple more words. I didn't know what the other words were. Today I know that those are caveats, are code words that deal with sensitive departmented information programs. So I told him, you know what, sir, I don't think you should be showing me these because I don't have a security clearance. And he told me, he says, private, you know, I'm not showing you anything I'm not supposed to be showing you.
Mm.
So with that, I went ahead and didn't think too much about that, but, you know, I was wondering, I'm not going to get out of AIT because I haven't taken any tests or anything, and the whole situation is they're going to expect me when I go to my first duty station to be able to type. So I went ahead and graduated. I thought, now how did I do this? Completing AIT, and they told me I took my test, which I didn't take, that I could type, I think it was 73 words a minute with less than 5 errors. And I, you know, that scared me because I knew I couldn't do that. Even today I hunt and peck on the computer. But I went ahead and went home on leave,
Mm-hmm.
then went to my first duty station, which was Fort Lee, Virginia. And as soon as I went in there, I saw the first sergeant and gave him my record and says, oh, you're a clerk typist. And I says, yes, first sergeant, that's what they tell me. I says, but, you know, I need to tell you something. I can't type. And you can't type. But isn't that what you went to school for? I said, yes, first sergeant, but I didn't learn anything while I was at AIT. I'm telling you, I can't type. So he says, he looks at my records a little closer and he says, okay, I'll wait here. And he goes into the commanding officer's office. Now the first sergeant commanding officer comes out, looks at me, and they got this smile on their face, says, tell me, are you colorblind? And I said, no, sir. I don't believe I'm colorblind. I haven't been told I'm colorblind. I said, I can make out the difference between colors. He says, okay. He says, I'm just wondering, he says, do you know the color of the uniform you have on? And, you know, I said, yes, sir, it's green. He says, okay, you don't think it's blue or anything? I said, no, sir, it's green. And I says, why are you asking me these questions, if I might ask? He says, oh, I just want to make sure that you're not colorblind, you're where you're supposed to be. Now, that would come back to haunt me later on.
Wouldn't blue be Air Force?
Blue would be Air Force.
Ah, yes.
And I was given no option as to what military duties I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was told, you know, under the circumstances, the best thing and the easiest thing to do is to just get you in an administrative and you'll be in the military. But to try to go on and get you into something else, like I wanted to go into Warrant Officer's Flight Aviation Program. Oh, no, that requires more physicals and all that. We don't need to do that. So, you know, the only thing was open to me, I was going to go in as some type of clerk. So when I got there, the first sergeant says, well, we'll think of something about what to do with you. So I went ahead in process, and about 2-3 days later, the first sergeant says, well, how do you feel about being the NBC / communications non-commissioned officer in charge for the unit? And I said, well, I've got no training in it. He says, no problem, we'll take care of that. And I said, okay. So I wound up going in February of '69 to Fort McCollum, Alabama. and that's where the U.S. Army NBC school was. And it was a 3-week course that I was taking there. So I went there, took the course, and started back to my unit. And when I started back to my unit, I found my ticket was missing. And I was wondering, okay, how am I going to get back to my unit without the ticket? There was this person that worked who was a Spec 5, and he and I became pretty good friends while we were there at the NBC school. But he said, well, I have to go back in the same direction. I have to go back to Fort, it's where the U.S. Army Security Agency is, Fort Belvoir. Bear with me.
You got it.
He said, I have to go back to Fort Belvoir because I work with the Army Security Agency and I'm an asset to the National Security Agency. So I go right by Fort Lee and you can ride back with me. So we were riding back and we were talking about things, and he was talking about his interest in UFOs, and I said, yeah, I had an interest, but I still wasn't up to talk about the things that happened. Anyhow, after I got back to my unit, I got a call, and he went ahead and said, you should come up here. Said, I'll show you around Fort Belvoir. Then we can go into D.C., and I'll show you around the Pentagon there. You've never been to the Pentagon. I just, oh, no, I've never been to the Pentagon. And I went ahead, and a staff car actually picked me up. And I didn't question them. I should have. I said, wait a minute. He's a Spec 5. A staff car comes here to pick me up. What's wrong with this picture?
Mm-hmm. Because that's not normal. That's not normal behavior, is it?
Totally not normal.
Mm-hmm.
But I went ahead, and when I got there, they told me where his office was. I went there. Well, he wasn't there. And they said, oh, well, he's out. He'll be back later on. So one of the guys there says, how would you like it if I took you over to the Pentagon and showed you around there? And I said, well, that'd be okay. We're not going to miss Jack, are we? And he said, oh, no. He says, we'll be back here. So we went on over, and when we went there, he went ahead and had a badge already there for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you got to stay right with me, that I'll show you around. And we went, looked around some of the places there in the Pentagon. Then we went to a place that was like an elevator, and we went down. And I thought, well, we're on the ground floor. Okay, we have a floor under the Pentagon, okay. But I don't know. I think we went down several floors
Mm-hmm.
below the Pentagon. But when we got there, they had this like monorail. And it was a little car you just sat in, and it went ahead. I don't know, I'd say we traveled for 10, 15 minutes.
Wow.
On that monorail. And I don't want to go into too much detail about what went on while we were down there.
Mm-hmm,
I really think that's something that someday they'll talk about, but I don't think they've talked about it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to one location, we got out, and we started to go down this corridor. And as we're going down this corridor, there's doors, like I thought, okay, there's offices, but we get down to where the corridor is just like a hallway with no office doors or nothing. And we go down about a third of the way or so. And he turns to me and he says, there's a lot of things that aren't as they appear. And he said this out of clear blue, and I said, what are we talking about? Like, what? There's a lot of things that aren't as they appear.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, well, like this wall here. He says, it looks solid, right? And he even tapped on his face. Who would believe that there was anything other than just a wall? And I said, what's your point? And he says, well, there's things along this wall that isn't part of the wall. And he pushed me. And it was like through the wall, like a door opened there. You know, it wasn't like I just went through it like a ghost would go through it.
Mm-hmm.
But it opened and I went through, and when I went through it, of course, I fell down going through it, and I got up and I said, "What are you trying to prove?" And when I got back up, I turned around and I looked, and there was this little table, like what we call field desk, a chair, and a little ETS in typical gray, sitting behind the field desk, looking directly at me. Then there were two men in civilian suits on either side of this little gray. And all of a sudden, it was like a buzzsaw going on in my head. So I went ahead, I went down on my knees, grabbed a hold of my head, and that's the last I remember. The next thing, I wake up back in Jack's office, and Jack still hasn't showed up. So they said, okay, you know, he's not going to be able to make it, but we'll get you back to your unit. And I said, okay. I said, but what happened when we went to the Pentagon? Oh, no, we didn't go to the Pentagon. I said, yes, we did. They were trying to make me believe that I just dreamed it.
Yeah.
And I said, no. We went. And, of course, the hardest thing to disprove was the fact that they took the badge off of me, but the badge was sitting on the desk. And, like, you know, they knew I was going to go over this, so the badge was already made, and I had my name on it and everything. I picked this up. Remember, we got these there at one of the checkpoints in the Pentagon. And, you know, they looked at one another thinking, okay, well, how do we get out of this? And finally one says, you're mistaken. It was here because, you know, you were going to go visit, but since Jack isn't here, maybe next time.
Oh, what?
Anyhow, I went back to my unit and still puzzled about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
What was this? And a couple of weeks, well, actually, about 2 months later, 2.5 months later, my unit was participating in a field training exercise there at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. So we went ahead, and there's a side note to that. We went ahead, went down the highway heading towards Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. We had one of our people that was posted, got there earlier to show us where we needed to turn off. And while we were on the highway going, he, of course, went ahead and had a couple of hours to wait for us to get there. So he started to read a comic book. And the whole convoy passed by without him even seeing the convoy. And we got about 6-7 miles on down the road before we realized we missed our turnoff and had to turn around and come back to turn off where we had to turn to go to Indiantown Gap.
Mm-hmm.
But that made the unit newspaper, a cartoon was put in the newspaper about that. So I just thought I'd mention that. But we went out, we set up our operations, and of course, being a civil affairs, the scenario was that we had to invade Cuba. We took over Cuba, and now it was time to set up a military government for preparation to return it to civilian authority and let them establish their own government there. And that's what the civil affairs units were involved with. So my mission was, of course, to handle the NBC equipment and to handle the communications equipment, like they had a SP22 switchboard that I could connect 20 field phone stuff to. So we had those all connected up. And I went ahead and had those set up, and I had 2 field radios that we were using, 2 PRIC 25s. One was for the company net, and one was for the group net. So I had those back there, and I know it was cold because I had my field jacket on, and I had our Coleman lantern back there in back of the deuce and a half, where I had the switchboard set up, and I was freezing to death. But sometime a little after midnight, I had one of the officers come up and tell me that they had activated the NBC emergency response team, which we were a part of, and that I would be moving out, disconnect my field phones that I already had out. Don't worry about them. That they would go ahead and get another switchboard, connect up. But I was to join this convoy of about seven vehicles, 4 Deuce and a half, and 3 Jeeps, I believe it was. So we took on off, and we were going to another location there at Indiantown Gap. And we were told that there was an experimental aircraft that went down, and there may be some radioactive components in it. And we had to go there, secure the area, and assist in the recovery of the craft. And forgive me, I don't want to go into too much detail because I still get emotional about it.
I understand.
But when we got there, there was this. We could see the floodlights around the crash area, and the craft went in at about a 30 or 40 degree angle, so we could see the craft sticking up, and it looked like the heel of a shoe is what it looked like. And when we got there, I went ahead and asked for further instructions where they want me to set up. I had extra field phones, 312s in my Deuce and a half, and I could set those up if they needed it. But there's one guy who I always started to call the Colonel, which in every case I was involved in, he was always there. And he went ahead and he says, well, right now, son, what I need you to do is go ahead. You have a Geiger counter. I said, yes, sir, I have a SPV 27. And he says, okay, I need surface readings off this craft. I need you to take the Geiger counter and start walking towards the craft and take readings. Well, I went ahead and started to walk with the APD 27, and as I got closer and closer, the readings would go up. But when the readings would go up, it was much higher than normal background radiation. Then when I got there to this little berm where it went into the ground, I could look down in there and I could see that there was it had a canopy, but on the side of the canopy there was this kidney-shaped like door that had opened. And rushing through this part, there were dead aliens there. There were dead bodies. Once again, a typical grave.
Yep.
And at that point, I wanted an officer up there because, I already knew that this wasn't one of our craft, and now it was confirmed with what I was seeing. But then after that, I was told to just go ahead, go back to my Deuce and a half, stay there and monitor the radios, and stay inside, and it wouldn't be necessary for me to come out. So I went ahead, went back there. If I had to go, like, to the restroom or something like that, I would have a person that would take me to where we had we didn't have what they call porta potties or anything like that. All we had was, living like in the field. So of course we had a ditch that was dug for a latrine. That was it. But the next day, we were all told that this was just an experimental aircraft that crashed. Everything's good. They recovered everything, and our services was no longer needed.
Can I just pause you there for a sec? Can I ask, when they told you that it was just an experimental aircraft, what did you think?
Oh, I let them know that wasn't no experimental aircraft. Of course, I was told to keep my comments to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, with what I saw, I knew, and no one dared to try to tell me it was monkeys that was flying the aircraft. uh, and of course, you know, one of the stories that was going to break about the Roswell incident, as far as the bodies went, they were going to go ahead and state that it was something that they called Project Albert, which dealt with us using monkeys to participate in our testing of the V1 and having monkeys in it. And the whole situation is the balloon story came out, and it seemed to stick because people wasn't asking questions, so they let it ride at that. And the question for the longest of time about the bodies that were seen never came into play. So the scenarios are almost always the same. It's always going to be this is what you saw, and of course with the advent of advanced aircraft that we were using, like the U-2, there were military personnel in the Antarctic that saw UFOs there, and they were highly unusual. They didn't look like anything they'd seen before, not like the ordinary lights that would be on an ordinary aircraft. So they were told that what they saw was nothing more than U-2s flying overhead on their way to missions within the Soviet Union. And the reason they didn't look like ordinary navigation lights on an aircraft is because they were flying so high they were reflecting the sun. And that right there would be really a good scenario and could even be acceptable, except for the fact that the U-2s that they were talking about were not your metallic silver color. They were purposely painted black.
Matte black too, huh?
Absolutely. Because the whole intent of the U-2 was not to be seen. And of course, radar could pick it up. At the time, they didn't have anything that could go ahead and bring the plane down at that altitude. And the cruising altitude of the U-2, I think, was between 80 and 100,000.
Exactly, it was, yes.
Feet up. And the Russians had nothing that could reach it and bring it down. It was a lucky shot that brought down Powers when he got shot down in '61, I believe it was. And the whole situation is, this is what they were saying, and the people who they were telling this to, they knew better, and they even had some of the people there that was involved with the program with the U-2s, and knew, no, this was not U-2s we were seeing. But here again, they couldn't share that viewpoint with the others that were seeing the same phenomena. But, you know, our space program didn't begin with our intentions of going to the moon in 1969 with Apollo 11 finally landing on the moon. We could have actually, had we went ahead and let the Army have its way, we could have landed people on the moon in 1959. They had a program set up called Project Horizon that they really wanted to take people to the moon.
Mm-hmm.
But with the Air Force and NASA coming in saying, oh, no, this should be our child. This is something we deal with. And actually, the Navy was working in conjunction with the Army on this program, and later would carry the ball, particularly on the booster missile that ultimately was utilized in taking people to the moon. But in the plan the Army had was in '59, go there, land, look around, come back. But the long-term goal was by 1963 to set up a moon base there, and it, to start off with was with 12 people. But the interesting thing is that, and I just found this document recently, the Army planned for some exotic weapons to be utilized on the moon because they felt that they could run into a situation where they may have to fight. Of course, if the Russians were capable of getting to the moon, then there may be a conflict there to ward off the Russian intruders.
Mm-hmm.
But also, they didn't know what else they would run into. In the early 60s, the Russians even thought along the lines of the concept that there may be inhabitable planets within our own solar system. Mars, and one of the moons of Mars, I think it was Phoebus, that they believed was hollow, and that Mars underwent some type of disaster on the surface of Mars, and the people who remained went and lived underground on Phoebus. They actually had people, scientific personnel, who really believed that was the case. So there, even though they were saying, that UFOs are something to be laughed at, they took very seriously the possibility that their astronauts would run into civilizations that may be as technologically advanced as we were, or even more advanced, and how these astronauts should deal with those situations.
So they planned to have the astronauts armed with weapons. But there's something else that comes from this. In 1952, wasn't it the Washington flyby?
Right, in July of 1952.
Yeah.
26, 27. And a real good sighting that happened that people don't even recall all that much because there were only one or two UFOs involved, and that was the week prior to that.
Oh.
And that one, to this day, is still listed as an unknown. And when the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, did a report, Technical Development Report 180, dealing with the sightings of the UFOs in July and in August, there in Washington, D.C., and they concluded they were temperature inversions. That one incident that occurred July the 19th still remained an unknown.
Do you know what happened during that flight, that incident?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what happened during that incident? What was it that people saw?
They're in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, on July 19th.
Well, yeah, there was an airliner that even saw the UFO. They reported as a bright light that appeared to be coming at them. And at the last moment, the bright light broke off. But it was tracked on radar. There were people on the ground that seen it. And, they wanted to try to say it was a meteor. They couldn't do that because meteors can't change courses in flight. They wanted to state that it was an aircraft, but they could not correlate that as being a fact. It couldn't be a balloon because radar went ahead and tracked it going. I think in this instance, almost 900 miles an hour.
That's not the speed that I know that wind goes at. Yeah.
So, absolutely, the balloon couldn't be going that fast.
Mm-hmm.
So they carried it as an unknown. Also, the situation is that what was it? On August the 13th, 1952, they had a slew of UFOs over Washington, D.C. Radar was picking up, and the actual count of the UFOs was 68 UFOs.
Wow.
All in one night. And, of course, they were dead reckoning because on July the 29th, 1952, they had that meeting at the Pentagon, the staff meeting in which they answered questions from the media. And, of course, they were at that time saying, they were just temperature inversions. There was nothing real. Well, if you go over the FBI report, if you go over the Blue Book report,
Mm-hmm.
you find that the people who were the radar controllers, the people who were involved with the chases, with the fighters that were sent up aloft, those people did not believe they were weather balloons or they were temperature inversions.
Mm-hmm.
They believed they were something real. And, of course, when I think it was Truman who said he wanted to know what was going on. Well, Captain Ruppelt, who was head of Project Grudge, the forerunner of Project Blue Book,
Mm-hmm.
went ahead and told the White House that it's nothing to be concerned about. There were temperature inversions. But, Major Fournet, who was the intelligence officer at the Pentagon handling any release of information on UFOs, he definitely did not believe they were
Inversions. Yep.
Matter of fact, he told the CIA in January of '53 that it was the firm conclusion of the people who really analyzed that particular case that these were extraterrestrial vehicles. These were extraterrestrial craft. He went ahead and told, there was a lieutenant, what was his name, Holcomb, I think, a naval lieutenant, who was there observing them also. He was a radar expert. He definitely felt that they were not temperature inversions, was much more reserved. I'm not calling them extraterrestrial vehicles, but he went ahead and stated that they exhibited technology that currently we didn't have.
Mm.
So you had all these people who was stating that these were real objects. They were not temperature inversions. They were not reflections of objects on the ground as a result of the temperature inversions. These were real objects, and they were in the air. And, of course, people saw them also. It wasn't just that they were picked up by radar. There was actually, as we call them, radar visuals. While they were being tracked by radar, they were also being sighted by people on the ground because they had the Ground Watch Observers Corps at that time. And they were seeing them, and they were tracking and plotting them and reporting them back to other locations. They were supposed to report them back for further notification to the Air Force. We sent fighters up to try to intercept these UFOs, and one pilot went ahead, closed in on one object, and found that he's being surrounded by several objects, and they kept closing in, and finally they broke away. Then, when they broke away, he locked on the first one that he saw and tried to go after it, and said he had maximum afterburners, and the UFO kept further outdistancing him, and he couldn't even catch up with it.
Wow.
So, and there are many cases I can go ahead and hit up on like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole situation that it was standard protocol, what we call SOP, standard operating procedure, to always have a possible explanation. As a matter of fact, the United States Air Force, even there at Blue Book, was ordered that we've already looked at the possibility of them being extraterrestrial spacecraft and we found nothing. And from here on in, barring hard evidence, which means physical evidence, we will not even entertain that as being an explanation. And actually, you'll find that in the Project Sign report that came out in February 1949. And I think on page 11 is where you'll find it stating just that.
Do you know, it gets to me that if we're looking at 1952 and you're talking about all these dates and thinking that NASA itself, its origin wasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Cliff, if you don't mind, 1958, wasn't it? Formed from NACA and Department of Defense.
Correct.
Now, didn't the first thing they did was commission the Brookings report to ask, what on earth should we do? Should we find something? And determined also that NASA is not supposed to be the first contact, and they're not supposed to say anything about them at all. Remember, we can't for a moment even think that NASA is a public agency. It isn't.
Yeah, but I'll tell you this much. NASA, when it comes to the crash retrievals, NASA's a scapegoat.
Yeah.
We derive, it was in 1962, we finally officially hit up on space vehicle fragments. And our authorization to do the recoveries were based on two documents that were actually brought into existence in 1948. That was National Security Council Intelligence Directive Number 2 and National Security Council Intelligence Directive Number 3. Those right there deal with our way of gathering intelligence data and producing intelligence product and disseminating it into the field. In 62, when we, because now we could mention space debris and the field exploitation of space objects that were launched into space and returned back to Earth, we started to acknowledge the fact that we're going to come into contact with these. Well, we also had already had UFOs that we had recovered. I could show you OSI documents making reference to some of these discoveries we made.
Just going to hold you right there. That's awesome. What a great point to stop it for the top of the hour break. We'll be back in about 2 minutes' time, everyone. Please hold on tight for a few station announcements.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
There is no denying the world is awakening. We see it in the global uprisings and demonstrations of the people around the planet and the new way of thinking and living that is arising naturally within each one of us and our communities. I have been a major player in this global shift and movement for over 20 years and have helped tens of thousands of people around the world change their lives and find their voice in order to help create the paradigm change we so desperately need. Join me here at Revolution Radio on the Just Bernard Show every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time for 2 hours of powerful interviews and discussion with some of the most influential visionaries of consciousness, alternative media, and suppressed knowledge. We promise to reveal the real matrix and empower your human experience.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent news story, and I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
On the go? Still want to listen? Don't have one of those fancy phones with too many buttons? Don't know what an app is? Or you don't even care? Well, we got you here at Revolution Radio. Now you can dial in 24/7 to listen to our shows. We have a number for Studio A and Studio B, and best of all, it's free. Don't forget, carrier charges for your cell phone provider may apply, though, so check with your cell provider to make sure. So ready? Here you go. Get a pen. Here's the number. Studio A is 712-432-6958, and Studio B is 716-748-0112. Thank you very much for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station in the world. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
You're back with David Meckie's Shiny Side Out on Freedom Slips, freedomslips.com. I'm sorry. That's right, the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. But since it is listener-funded radio, and if you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button on the site support page. It's on the left-hand side in the chat if you're in there right now. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run this station. It really does. And we're doing very well with this month. So, yeah, awesome work, everybody. I'd like to say hello to all the new listeners we have on today. I know every single week we get more and more, and there's people following us in YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And they're each one of them. We have even had some people buy some of our mugs, which are really cool. These, I think we make about 8 cents on it. But anyway, it's pretty cool. Get yourself a part of that. The next person to buy one, I will donate $5 to the station. I'll donate even more money than I'm earning from it. So, yeah, we are halfway through show number 160, or 0, 60, and 100, as Meckie would say if he were here. He's not, unfortunately. He's stuck in Hong Kong, working his fingers to the bone for the man. That's what he's doing. And do you know what? We've got the best guest ever. I don't say that for everybody. We have Clifford Stone with us, and we just left off, by the way. He was talking about having recovered, the documents in relation to vehicle fragments, and how everything was beginning to change in the government. Clifford, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Where we left off at was NASA, of course. You know, they were the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and they felt that they should actually be the ones in charge of recovering foreign space debris and retaining it until it could be returned to the launch authority, the country that sent it up there. The intelligence community was highly upset with this and totally rejected any notion that NASA would have any claim in this to take part beyond what they would want them to do, like for technical expert assistance in going over the debris that they should recover. Now, naturally, we did recover a lot of foreign space objects of, say, the Soviet Union, among other countries. But we also recovered what the Defense Intelligence Agency and the State Department were referred to as objects of unknown origin. And the objects of unknown origin are those things that our interest really lies in. For example, Kecksburg, West Virginia, or Kecksburg, Virginia, December 9th, 1965. The crash of a UFO there. They tried to say, oh, it was a meteor. Well, they couldn't find no debris, but something crashed, something caused a fire. And by virtue of being at Lockwood Air Force Base, when they brought it there to Lockwood Air Force Base early that morning of December 10th, I can tell you right now that that was not a meteor. It wasn't a Cosmos 96 that fell back to the Earth. By the way, Cosmos 96 did fall back to the Earth, but it was up further north in the Canadian area as opposed to being down there around Kecksburg area. So they went ahead and hit up on getting this object and putting it on the back of the flatbed and actually taking it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Where it went from there, I have no idea, but it made a stopover there at Lockwood Air Force Base. And the only thing that happened, they had a Army tactical cab pulling the lowboy on which the craft was on the back of, and replaced it with a commercial vehicle or cab to pull it the rest of the way into Wright-Patterson. The gun jeeps were replaced by staff cars as opposed to being gun jeeps. And when they brought it out, they took it to a hangar which was known as the RB-47, a reconnaissance hangar for reconnaissance B-47s, which were known as RB-47s. And they took it in through the back gate. When they came out, they left through the back gate also. But when they brought it out of that hangar, there was this, once again, whirling sound like with a high pitch of a electric motor or generator. And there was blue light coming out from underneath the tarp that was covering the UFO on the back of the truck. And the way the people were running around, I had the impression that there was major concern over whatever was going on.
It didn't seem like normal practice, and it wasn't just... it seemed odd to you.
Oh, absolutely. And in 1973, the State Department released instructions for clarification that the code word moon dust would be utilized for the recovery of objects of non-U.S. origin or of unknown origin. And there were many, many, many of these that came into play. I went ahead in 1994 and I did a report for Congress. And I was able to make 27 copies of that before I ran out of money to send to 27 different congressmen.
Mm-hmm.
And to try to open the eyes of members of our Congress that the United States government has a program. At the time, it was known as Project Moondust, that dealt with only two things: the recovery of space debris of non-U.S. origin and objects of unknown origin. And the objects of unknown origin, with this program, with the utilization of Project Blue Fly, which is the Air Force recovery teams, and they worked in unison with other units within all branches of the service to recover interplanetary spacecraft that did not originate here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did the report, sent it to members of Congress, trying to get it to be open up about, ask questions about these two programs. Well, there created a problem because at the time I started to do this earlier while I was still in the military, because I got tired of the way we were treating people and knowing people. A lot of times people can't deal with it and wind up killing themselves. People go ahead and have these experiences of high strangeness, and they lose their families, they lose their jobs, they become social outcasts simply because they have had an experience that is beyond their comprehension and they can't explain. And we are wrong in trying to state that these things don't happen. We are wrong in trying to say, oh, it was nothing, don't worry, but you may have seen a mock moon or a mock sun.
Flock of geese, Venus, swamp gas.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the sole reason that I wanted to come out and start talking is that I felt we were wrong. And it's not just the U.S. Many governments on the face of this globe.
It was common.
Know a whole lot more, but keeping it covered up for whatever the reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand, and I have documents where I can even point this out. I even have audio tapes where we don't know what the world reaction would be with just the announcement that we had made contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence that appears to be vastly superior than we are technologically,
mm-hmm.
And it just being radio contact. Little alone saying, guess what, folks? Extraterrestrials are real, as
mm-hmm.
well as some of them are being what we call multidimensional. They're visiting our planet on a regular basis. They're here. We can go ahead and say, and I know this to be true, we have nothing to fear from them. They're not hostile. But, we want to give you as much information as we possibly can to nullify any fears that the public at large, worldwide, might have.
But I mean, that sounds like a dream to have a government say that. For anyone out there, the listeners who are abductees, this would make most of your problems go away. It doesn't stop you being abducted, but I think it can't help one's sanity to hear the government that you're meant to trust tell you that it doesn't exist.
Well, that's what I hope. And also, the whole reason I started to talk, come out, I knew that I was going to pay the price the rest of my life for coming out in the open and talking.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to put the needs of others ahead of my needs. I had to go ahead and think about those people who don't know that they're not alone. Because there are a lot of people who don't talk about UFOs, that don't even follow UFOs, that they see it on the news, that they see it as being, no, this doesn't apply to me. My experience was different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when, you have the situation where you can talk to other people who've had similar experiences. With me being involved in the recoveries, I wasn't the only one there. There are many other people. And with my experiences, people may have other experiences that I didn't experience that can add more to the puzzle. But the important thing to me was to go ahead and say, hey, look, I was there. We recovered these items. We have things that truly show that we are not alone in the universe, and that there's an interaction worldwide of our visitors having interaction with people all around the globe. And this is so they can better understand us as a species. And we have nothing to fear. It's like, they didn't ask me, would I mind if they follow me the rest of my life?
Mm-hmm.
It was a situation I was selected. And there are other people that have been selected. And I'm not alone in that. But what is important to me is to try to go ahead and provide confirmation to the other people who have had these experiences but didn't know who to turn to, or didn't know if they were crazy or if they were all alone.
Mm-hmm.
And my message is, you're not alone. It's going on. Our governments know about it. And darned our governments for keeping it classified.
Exactly.
Because there's no need to do that.
No, but the only question I've got is, I'd be positive that the governments know that it's going on, and that the governments themselves have entered into an agreement of some kind with them, or as an alternative, that it's happening without their full cooperation. Because I don't know which way that would go, and this is my next question, Cliff. If you don't mind, my next question is: you said publicly in the press club that there was 57 catalogue species. When was that, and how did you know? What part of your job led you into discovering that or being told that? Do you mind if I ask?
Oh, no problem at all.
Okay.
I was on the site of one of the recovery operations, and I was shown this manual. And actually what it is, it kind of goes ahead and gives you a brief description of each of the 57 species that we've identified, and steps to be taken should they need some type of medical care. Because first aid, as we know it, doesn't work for all 57 species. There are other types of exotic first aid that you have to use on them if you come up on a crash site and you have wounded ETs.
So what's an example? Hang on. We've got imagine if I've got a cut in my arm and I'm an alien. I could be any one of them, a species. Are you saying like they're not all carbon-based life forms as we know them, that can breathe our air and things like that? And is what's harmful about our treatments?
Well, even our food. Our food can be toxic to some of them.
Oh.
But the way we handle it, well, for example, the antibiotics can actually be caustic to them.
Okay.
Some of the ointments that we use can actually irritate this. It's about like...
You're going to say iodine.
Yeah, iodine in several of the species you would not want to use.
Mm-hmm.
You actually had a white cream that you used as opposed to the iodine.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about that white cream was that one of the products that went into it was like a plaster paste or something like this, like for construction, that like you use the paste to fill up a space that might have you might have a window that air is getting through, and you use this plaster to...
Okay, yep.
And I wasn't supposed to see this book. I was never supposed to be around it. It was just that some of the people that would show up, because, you're never meant to be together where you could sit down and compare notes.
Mm-hmm.
The closest you would come to that is if you had the quick response NBC team, and they finally got around calling them NEST. And now there's a whole lot of them that are made up within the Atomic Energy Commission that are civilian, not military, but the military's over it. I don't know how that works now. And I do know that they changed the names Moondust and Blue Fly because it became compromised when people like me started talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt that, under those two programs, we've hurt a lot of people. And the people have a right to know the truth. And we've recovered alien spacecraft that did not originate on this Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to be careful when I say we've recovered alien spacecraft, because some of them have been multidimensional aircraft. In short, not all UFOs are interplanetary. Some are multidimensional.
I get you.
I'm sorry?
I get you. Is that in the way that their propulsion works, or the way that they move around, or the distances they cover?
Well,
or is interdimensional just, they could just sort of vanish into a different dimension that's, right next to ours. We had a show on multi-dimensions, so yeah, I get it, and I think our listeners would understand.
Well, actually, the traversable wormholes is what they use.
Ah, right.
But when you use traversable wormholes, you're doing multi-dimensional travel.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on what propulsion systems you're using, makes a difference on how many of those complex multi-dimensions you can traverse.
Mm-hmm.
When I first asked, okay, Corona, where do you come from? Well, it's a planet that's 100 light years from planet Earth. And, of course, it was explaining they use traversable wormholes to come here. And, I queried them about, well, if you enter a wormhole, how do you know where you're coming out? Well, they have a means of doing a guidance. Just like we go ahead, get in a plane, we know how to fly that plane from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
Let me rephrase that. Trained people, the pilots know how to do that. I'd get you lost if I was trying to fly a plane from point A to point B. But our pilots are quite capable of doing that based on the training they have and the knowledge they have on how to use the avionics of the aircraft.
Of course.
With them, they can plot a course from point A to point B, anywhere in the universe, and come out. And like coming from his planet to come here, he explained by the use of antimatter, real time passes, and that distance of traveling 100 years is approximately an hour and 40 minutes in real time as it would pass here on Earth. But he also said what we use most of the time is negative matter. And I thought, okay, negative matter, that's the same as antimatter. And he says, do you understand the concept of antimatter as a propulsion system through a traversable wormhole? I said, I think so. And he said, okay, then that's good enough. When I found out about negative matter and how much more exotic of an energy force, which we have reason to believe it exists, but we don't know that it exists. I know it exists because I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
But our science is still trying to determine, does it exist or does it not? But they're leaning toward it really does exist. So my little friend was not real happy with me hitting up on that because he felt that it was dangerous and even a little knowledge of the potential of antimatter
I can imagine it could have been used. It could be weaponized, and we'd all be dead.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But the difference between antimatter and negative matter is that with negative matter, if it's 100 light years or 1 billion or 2 billion light years, it's like standing at a doorway, and you step over. Well, that's the point you want to be. It's instantaneous. Whether it's 100 light years, 1 billion light years, it's instantaneous. There's no real time involved. And
I get it. It's like bending space-time. Yeah, you're bending space. You're bending space,
yes.
So the 2 points join, and it's just like you said, going through a doorway from one place to another, and when you've stopped bending space, you're now 100 or 1 billion or wherever long it is away. I get
Absolutely.
it. I completely understand.
And, it's still hard for me to comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that's the way they can do it. And I know that when they arrive here at the Earth, they initially arrived where normally it's over the northern or southern polar caps. And it's outside of the atmosphere. If they make an accident and they exit the traversable wormhole, inside of our atmosphere, there's a lot of damage caused to the ground for several hundred miles around. So they don't want to do that. But here at the same time, when they exit the wormhole exit portal outside of the atmosphere over, let's say, the North Pole, then come in, sometimes there's many flights. For example, in 1950, our radar picked up many flights many unidentified craft coming in over the northern poles. Therefore, that would be the exact way that at the time the Soviet Union would attack the United States.
Of course.
So we went on full alert. This was at the time, at the onset of the Korean War also. So we were expecting that there may be more involvement there because of the volunteers that Red China sent North Korea. So we were very concerned about what these objects could be. But as strangely as they showed up, they just as mysteriously disappeared. And most people don't even know about that event taking place. But it happened, and it happened several times over.
You've mentioned...
So your question about did we have open contact? Yes, it was necessary to have that open contact.
Mm-hmm.
And the scenario that I just gave you about where a nuclear war being started by accident, simply because UFOs coming in over the polar regions are mistakenly identified as ICBMs heading towards targets in the United States, mm-hmm. or enemy bombers heading towards the United States. So it was necessary. And this is one of the things that led to the hotline between Washington and Moscow being set up. Because these objects were being picked in. It was acknowledged that before we would go ahead and launch our missiles and start our bombers going on to their destinations at preordained targets within the Soviet Union, if we picked up and the term UFO was utilized, that we would contact the other party and say, hey, do you have anything coming towards us? Is there something that we need to know about that we're
Yeah, of course. We're about to launch, guys. And,
that dealt with UFOs. There was an international exchange on if UFOs, and the reason I stress UFOs, radar signatures are unique. You can normally tell the kind of the plane, the size of the plane, the type of the plane. Is it a fighter? Is it a transport? Is it a bomber? Simply by the radar signature, what we call the RCS, radar cross-section. And the whole situation is the term UFO was put into that agreement. So it'd be no mistake that if you couldn't identify it by the RCS and you categorically hit up on it as a UFO, they wanted to make sure that it wasn't a irregular type bomber or a regular type missile that you were sending at one of the other party.
Of course, because
like
that
right
could be the
now.
end of the planet.
Oh, absolutely. Well, like right now.
Yeah, things are tense right now.
What's that?
Things are tense right now, all right.
Oh, absolutely. But even in space, things are tense.
Oh.
Because right now, the U.S. Strategic Command, they have the responsibility of checking on objects out there in space. And we have a little thing that we call UCTs, and that stands for uncorrelated targets. Now, normally after close scrutiny, officially we come away where 90 to 95% of those targets can be identified as natural. Sometimes misidentification of, say, the International Space Station, with 5% being truly unknowns. Well, I disagree with what they say officially. I think unofficially it's more like 80 to 85% can be readily identified, with 10 to 15% not being able to be identified and being true unknowns. And this is going on within our own solar system. We have objects out there that, for example, 1991 VG.
I know that one.
I honestly believe that to be an extraterrestrial probe.
That now
just found around 1947.
Just for everyone's understanding, this is an object that's in the same orbit around the sun as the Earth, but it's at just slightly less velocity, and we're slowly catching up to it. And it isn't round; it's a very odd shape. It's angular as well, isn't that right?
Yes, it is. And it will make its next closest approach to Earth sometime in 2016.
Wow.
And, these are things that people don't talk about. And right now, even NASA says that it's one of two things, because it can't be an interplanetary probe. It cannot be an extraterrestrial probe, as far as NASA's concerned, because that's not in their vocabulary. Therefore, it has to be one of two things. Both are very unlikely. One is that it's a highly unusual asteroid or comet that has never been seen before or since. The other thing is that it's some booster rocket from one of our earlier flights that we overlooked and was just floating around up there. And it's about 10 meters in diameter. And the probability of it being a booster is slim to none, and Slim left town. And the other thing is that for it to be a unusual asteroid, no. Once again, asteroids can't make course changes, and we believe at one time this object made a course change to avoid a collision with another asteroid.
So I've got that thing is amazing on its own, and I love that. And what I was going to ask you, I really wanted you to say a bit more about what the surprises were with the 57 catalogue species. Because I've heard you say that the surprise to the scientific community, to be honest, is that they're bipedal.
Oh, well, yeah, because there were life forms that you wouldn't even recognize as life forms. You had some life forms that were almost like pure energy. You had life forms that were of like plasma. You had some that were carbon-based. You had some that were silicon-based. short, you had some that they didn't have to drink. They didn't have to drink water. They'd drink water, but very little. And the water was more of a purified form than what we have here on Earth. I don't know how to explain that. I'm not a scientist. Just
that's okay.
The things that was in the book was fascinating, and I'd have loved to have gotten a copy of that. But there were only a few copies that were made, and they were made specifically for the lead of the person that was to show up on one of these recoveries of craft out of this world.
Of course. Now, when you were talking about when you were in the government basement under the Pentagon, and you heard this sound in your head, was there any part of your further work with the military where you had contact with ETs?
We had several. I had about 12 incidences during the time I was in the military.
And did you have the same effect, or was it? Do you think they might have?
Oh no!
Shot you with something?
It wasn't the same effect.
Oh right.
This one right here, I really don't. I think this was part of the orientation to gear me to where I would be brought in to the program.
Yeah. Okay. So what can you discuss one or any of those other roles where you were in contact?
Well, yeah, the one situation is where we knew I would operate as what they call as an interfacer.
Oh, right.
And as the interfacer, you were in communication with the entity. Directly. And there was one time, once again, there at Fort Belvoir, that, can you excuse me for just a minute?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
You're right. Look, just for everyone, I've got an amazing guest, Clifford Stone. You're listening to Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. We've got about another 20 minutes before the end of the show, and I totally understand. It's very late where Clifford lives. It's in the AM, and I appreciate every second that we've got with him on the line. Some of the information that he's brought tonight with me in this conversation is just truly amazing. He has come in contact face to face with an alien that's been on government soil in a government building. Government, the same government that's lying to you that they don't exist. He's seen a book that is a government issued or written book which has 57 catalogue species at the time when he was working. Now that's something else. I feel sorry, to be honest, for all of the people who are abductees, like I said. But one of the things that always gets me. Are you back, Cliff?
I'm back. I just had some things going on out near the backyard. I need to check on that.
All right. Are you okay?
Oh yeah.
All right. Tremendous. So you were talking about your role as an interfacer.
Yeah, and this one we went ahead. We helped it to escape, and of course they got real angry with me and upset, and was trying to tell me if we were saying that he was our guest. He was our guest.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went in, no one else could hear. No one else could hear what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not just hearing; you can feel it too. So he was saying, "I'm afraid," and I could feel his fear. And I knew I needed to help him to get out because his people was coming to get him. And when they came to get him, some of us could get hurt or even killed. And he didn't want that. He was willing to go ahead and let himself be killed by us if necessary.
But not sacrifice the lives of you.
Right.
Yeah.
So we went ahead. We got him as soon as we got him up through the fence. He was good to go. He went out. The craft came over, and it was like a light came down, and he just disappeared in that light. And of course, the guy always called the colonel, and I finally found. I don't know if his first name was really true. He said I could call him Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So I went ahead, called him Martin a couple of times. Most of the times I called him Colonel. But he went ahead and says, okay, in the future, before you do anything like this, you let me know. And he says, you shouldn't feel the need to do this ever again. I said, you know what? Under the circumstances, if it comes up again, I'll do the same thing. That you got the wrong guy if you expect me to go ahead and not have some very human compassion for our visitors here. And, you know, from that time on, I realized something, that they don't have rights. We don't recognize them, even if it comes to the point where we realize that they're real, they're here, they're highly intelligent. A dog, a cat has more rights than our visitors do. Our animals have more protection under the law than our visitors do. And
I have a hard time. I have a hard time gripping that, but I completely get it. You know, it's mortifying, isn't it?
Oh yes, sir. And you know the way that they went ahead and brought me into the program. We had these quick response teams, and if you were involved with NBC, like we had, I'm not sure of how many we had there at Fort Lee, Virginia, but for 3 days you'd go and you'd be right there located, ready to move out within a moment's notice to a location. We had 2 teams, A team, B team. A team would move out to be on site within an hour or within 2 hours. B team within 4 hours. If there was a nuclear, biological, or chemical accident or incident. So I was involved in that, and we had my lieutenant. He had to go to Fort Belvoir to attend a meeting of all the OICs on some of the things that we were to do and some potential scenarios that we might find ourselves in. So when we went there, there was Army and there was Air Force, Navy, and Marines. They were all there. I didn't have a whole lot of money. I came from a poor family. So I sent most of my money back home that I made back home to my mom, so she could use it, her and my sister. And at the time, I was trying to live off $20 a month out of my paycheck. But, you know, this was 1969, and living there on the military, and things didn't cost. I mean, going to the movies was $0.25. A haircut was $1.25.
Wow.
So we went we went there, and of course with me, I went ahead, talked to the people in the mess hall, and they made me a little sack lunch. And I went ahead. We went to Fort Belvoir, and when it came time for everyone to go eat, there was, as far as the drivers went, there was myself, and there was this Air Force Airman First Class. We were out there. He had a sack lunch, and we decided we were going to eat. And we decided, well, you know, we can go inside and have a seat. Now, there were no guards on the building, okay? Which means that, you know, a lot of people, well, gee, if this was such a highly classified briefing, why wasn't there guards that wouldn't let you in? Well, I think it was a setup. I think we were meant to go in there. But he and I both went in. And when we went in, it was an old theater, wooden frame building, which at one time had been a theater. But we went up the stairs, we went to the balcony area, and when we got up there, it was like this plexiglass that separated us from being able to yell out or talk to the people downstairs or hear what they were saying.
A viewing platform, yep.
Right. So we went ahead, and we noticed that the officers were being shown film footage of motion picture and of stills of what we'd call typical flying saucers, dish shape, triangular shape, cigar shape. They were being shown pictures of those where they were flying, where some had crashed into the ground. Then there were aliens, extraterrestrials, dead and living. And, of course, the airman and I thought that we had seen quite a few of the sci-fi movies, so we were trying to identify, well, which movies did these come from? Well, we couldn't identify any of them come from any of the science fiction movies we had seen. So what we didn't know at the time, there were several people coming up behind us. And when we finally went ahead, we had the one guy that was in charge. He yelled out, "What the heck are you guys doing here?
Oh, dear.
Who said you could be up here?" And they started to, go ahead, grab us, and just kept pushing us. Actually pushed us down the stairs.
Oh.
Then when we got down the stairs, there was this panel van that was there. The side doors open, and literally threw us in the back and shut the door and locked it. And they took us to this other building, which was way out in the sticks, the only building by itself. And we went in there, and they took us to this room where we had two guys that was asking us questions, and one guy sitting in the corner with a clipboard. He never said a word. He just kept writing on that clipboard. And they went and asked us over and over and over again, "What did you see? What do you think you saw?" And, we were telling them there was nothing. "Oh, no. They were playing movies, right? What did you see?" And, we thought, okay, we're in trouble because somebody's not happy with us seeing them showing science fiction trailers to all these officers, which wasn't the case at all. But we went ahead, and I found out because I was there for 4 nights and 5 days. And, you had a room. They'd take you to a room. You had one of these little military bunks, that metal bunk that you would lay on. They'd take you there. They had about a 25-watt light bulb in the room. And they'd let you go there for maybe 10, 15 minutes. Then they'd bring you back out. Then they would start going ahead and interrogating you for 5, 6 hours. And they would go ahead, let you go back to your room, 10, 15 minutes. And they'd bring you back out and go 5, 6 hours more. And the two guys that was questioning us, they would alternate taking rest. So I found out real quick that you'll go ahead and take sleep over food.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the evening, the third evening, the airman finally said, "I didn't see a darn thing." And they said, "Are you sure?" And he says, "Hey, I don't even know what they were talking about. I saw nothing. I haven't a clue what they were doing in there."
Mm-hmm.
So they went ahead and said, "Okay, we're going to have you sign some papers, then we'll get you back to your unit." Then he left. I never saw him after that. I don't know if that was the end of it for him or what, but I went ahead, saw it work for him, and I said, "I didn't see anything." And when I said I didn't see anything, they looked over at the guy with the clipboard. The guy with the clipboard looked down at the clipboard, looked back up, and he shook his head in the negative. So I wouldn't get out until late in the evening on the 5th day of going through all this torment. I was taken back to my unit, taken back to Fort Lee, Virginia. When we got there, it was late Friday evening. It may have even been early Saturday morning. I went on to my room, I went to bed, and I slept till the next morning when the charge of quarters came and got me up and says, you're wanted in the first sergeant's office. So I get up, go down there. When I go down there, I'm told to go into the company commander's office. And as soon as I go in there, the two guys that was doing all the interrogation, they're there.
Uh-oh.
And they tell me that they're investigating where I was at for a week. And I kept saying I was doing my duty. I was where I was supposed to be. And, well, no, Sergeant, you weren't, because they're carrying you as AWOL here. And finally I went ahead and said, come on, guys, you know where I was at. You were there. And one guy went ballistic. He says, see, I told you we should have taken care of him. He can't keep his mouth shut. He will be talking. We should have just put a bullet in his head, be done with it, and say it was a training accident, end of discussion.
Yep.
But no, we want to be the nice guys. And so the guy that was acting like the good guy, he goes ahead and says, okay, calm down. Says, why don't you go to the snack bar, buy us a couple sandwiches, get us some coffee, bring it back here, and we'll iron all this out. So he's going out, storming, acting like, worst thing in the world happened was not taking care of me and silencing me from the beginning. So when he left, the guy that was trying to play the good cop, you might say, says, all we need you to do is work with us, and we know it's something you're interested in. We know you're interested in UFOs. And I said, well, isn't everyone? No. You're interested in UFOs. And you may have some talents we can use. And, at the end of the year, the truth's coming out anyhow. Because remember, the Condon Committee report was going to be coming out.
Yes.
So it was, the truth's going to be coming out at the end of the year anyhow. So all you have to do is just play ball with us until it comes out. Then it will all be in the open. We'd still like to use you from time to time. But are you willing to do that? And I said, I really don't think I'd care for that too awful much. I don't know if that'd be a good thing. And, of course, the other thing was I had to re-enlist for 3 years, 3 additional years. And, of course, while they were just went through, I wasn't sure I really wanted to do that. So they went ahead and said, okay, we'll give you the weekend to think about it. Says, oh, by the way, the other thing is there's going to be another investigation if you decide not to go ahead and do that which we request. And that is why you wasted all this money of the U.S. government. I said, what do you mean wasted? He said, well, didn't you enlist in the Air Force? I said, no, sir, I enlisted in the Army. He said, oh, you did? Well, why does your contract say you enlisted in the United States Air Force? And all these 6-7 months that you've been in the military right now, all that is money wasted because it's a breach of contract. And you may find yourself being court-martialed because of that. Well, actually, they couldn't court-martial me over that. But then again, I was a young kid, and I didn't know that. So, you could see them putting you in jail, putting you someplace where they have to pump sunshine to you for the rest of your life. And this goes away. All you have to do is agree to assist us. And it goes away. Well, Monday I went and re-enlisted. And I actually got to take stuff home with me that was considered classified and show to some of my friends here. All I had to do was remember not to make copies and bring everything back.
I'm going to hold you right there. Thank you so much, Clifford, for a tremendous... I can't believe the time went so quickly. We'll see you next week, everybody, for show 161. I'm going to like to thank Clifford Stone for being a part of the show, being on the network, and love to everyone. Thank you.